There are so many design processes out there that it can get overwhelming. But out of all those, there are only three which are widely used around the world. The first one is design thinking, then Google's design sprint, and then the double diamond. In this video, we will talk about each of them in detail, what they are, when they are used, when they are not used, and how do they fit into the agile teams and lean startups, right? And then at the end of the video, I'll talk more about how you should consider going about and using a design process while working on your projects and how important they are. So without further ado, let's talk more about that. So let's talk about UX design processes. So the general definition of a design process is that it is applied, like when applied in the right way, they are the best way to unleash creativity, fast forward results, and bring stakeholders along on a journey. So a process is put in place to help you unleash your creativity, which would be essentially be used to solve problems. That's the purpose of processes. But now that there are so many processes out there, the biggest challenge is choosing the right one for your situation, your team, and your organization. Because if you don't choose the right one, it would not be as effective as the other one, right? So choosing the right one is a big challenge. So this video is about giving you a right point to narrow down the product design process that is right for you and your team for the opportunity and problem you are wrestling with right now. Now I have highlighted right now because in design, adaptability is key. Adapting the right process to the right situation is hugely recommended rather than using just a blanket application of one process to everything. We don't have one design process that rules them all, right? So adaptability is key, and you should always be using the right process to the right situation. So these are the three most popular design processes used all around the world by several teams: design thinking, Google design sprints, and the double diamond. We'll be talking about each of them separately. So design thinking, especially when combined with the human-centered design, is about starting with the human at the end of your product. That means like while you are working or just starting out this entire process, you need to keep the human you are designing for in your mind. And that's why you start by developing empathy with them. So you can think from their perspective and feel the problem yourself. Then you need to understand them and working through the solutions to their problems, and then going through experimentation. So it sort of boils down to these 5 steps, which are the steps of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. But don't be fooled, because this looks like a linear process, but the steps do not need to be followed one after another. It is encouraged to jump between steps or repeat steps in an effort to best address the situation you are working on. So maybe you are done with the empathize phase, you are done with the define phase, you are ideating, then you prototype, then you test. If the testing is not successful, you may go back to ideation, you may go back to empathize and define. If you are not able to define a problem, you go back to empathize. So you need to go back or repeat the steps based on the situation you are working on. It is not a linear process. Just want to be clear on that. So when do we use design thinking? So design thinking is great for understanding or solving open-ended problems in a specific domain. It isn't useful in situations where the outcome is mostly known in advance, because it's an innovative process. It's about finding a solution. So it can be useful as a tool in helping you choose the domain to get specific, but it isn't always the best fit for us. Then let's talk about design sprints. So it's a methodology developed by Google. It provides a short and focused approach to bring together a team, understand, and then solve a problem. And the biggest benefit of design sprint is how it compacts different frameworks, methods, steps, and considerations into a nice 1 to 5 day package, right? So it's a 1 week long activity where you have a bunch of activities defined for each day, and that way you can solve a problem in that amount of time. The main steps in a Google design sprint are plan, understand, sketch, decide, prototype, validate, and test. And planning is like the most essential stage of this entire sprint, right? Because without a good plan you cannot go to the next steps. So this is how a design sprint works: when to use it and when not to use it. So the design sprint kit by Google, it says that you should use design sprints at the start of a new initiative to define your product or create a shared vision, when you need to inject speed into your decision making process, if your product team has become blocked on a problem, after uncovering new insights that you want to action and leverage. You should not use design sprints if you don't have a strong enough understanding of your customer base, if you have clear product direction and just need time. If you don't have leadership buy-in, you should not go and use design sprints, because design sprint is actually when you have planned out what is the solution, like what is the problem you want to solve, and this entire sprint is to find the solution and then build a prototype and then test it. So it can only be done when the leadership has given a green light that okay, this is the problem that you should solve. Lastly, we have the double diamond. This captures the commonalities of the creative process across disciplines and divides into four distinct phases: discovery stage, define stage, develop stage, and deliver stage. Now, these four things, these different four different phases, are essentially what are the bedrock of every process out there. So, every design process has got these four principles, right? Research, analysis, ideation, and then testing. So these four core principles are behind every design process out there, and the same thing is in this double diamond. The visual of the diamonds in this process also depicts how ideas need to go through divergent thinking first. That's opening of a diamond. So these are the phases of discovery and development, because you are gaining insights and you are like expanding the problem to better understand it. Then they need to be refined through a conversion thinking. That's the closing of the diamond. That is the define stage, because you are like taking all those insights and defining and converging into a problem. Same for delivery. The double diamond is most useful when a longer running process is required and a broad canvassing of ideas is required. Then again, the divergent thinking and conversion thinking doesn't work when the outcome is known and just gets to be done. Because again, this is an innovative innovative design process where you need to find a solution up by canvassing a lot of ideas. It cannot be used, or it won't be as effective in the other cases. But now that we have talked about all of these different design processes, there is something to be mindful of. Much like a food recipe, the order and structure of design processes helps designers to get started, but it's only with practice, inventiveness, experimentation, and constraints that they might formulate a process that works for them for a specific problem. Right? So these processes I've talked about, they are just there to help designers to get started. Design thinking, or design in general, is super accessible. So unfortunately, this accessibility of design is often confused with shallow ease, and most organizations that set out to incorporate design in their culture struggle with adoption because this fundamental misunderstanding of the rigor behind the subject. They underestimate the efforts behind what goes behind design. They just associate the entire process with design thinking and these five pentagons. But what happens is, the problem with the hexagons is that they have created the design process. This is the only process. This is an all encompassing thing we can use for every problem. But in reality, they are just a first recipe. Each hexagon is just a first recipe. They are merely a suggestion for how to get started. Behind the hexagons are only the starting set of tools and behaviors to experiment with in each of those modes. So they are just a starting point. They cannot be an all encompassing process for all problems. And that is why adoption is quite tough. So, Stanford's D School says that designers should endeavor to enable a set of 8 core design abilities so that they might develop their own creative confidence and also inspire others, take risks, and persevere through tough projects throughout their lives. Designers should be their own unique chefs. Schools like Stanford don't want to churn out individuals that only know how to follow a recipe, right? So, what are those 8 core design abilities? I'll just talk about them from a very overview perspective. So, the biggest one is navigate the ability to navigate ambiguity. Then we have learn from others, essentially people and context. Then the ability to experiment rapidly, to synthesize information, to communicate deliberately, move between concrete and abstract easily, build and craft intentionally, and then design your design work. These are the 8 core design abilities which Stanford says that every designer should possess in order to have creative confidence and also inspire others, take risks, right? And tackle tough projects. So, if you want me to make another video on each of these design core abilities, like one video to explain all of them, leave a comment below this video and I'll do that. So that was all for this video. This will be the upcoming topic we'll be talking about, and so subscribe to stay updated and follow me on Instagram at shazibkasmi.design. So that was all about design processes. I hope you found this video helpful, and in the next video we will be talking about how to go about and build your UX portfolio, how you can stand out, and what considerations you need to take into account so that you get that job you're applying for. So I'll see you in the next video.